My boyfriend and I had been dating for nearly 2 years, me, a 22-year-old woman, and him, a 21-year-old man. This relationship had truly been the best time of my life. I never thought I could feel so deeply connected to another person. The kind of bond we shared went beyond just companionship. It felt like a meeting of souls. Many people might think I'm too young to know what true love is, but I genuinely believed he was my soulmate. He wasn't just my boyfriend. He was my best friend, my partner, and the person I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. Our story started long before we became a couple. His sister, who's been my best friend since 6th grade, had introduced us. I used to visit their home often, and he always had a bit of a crush on me. For a long time, I didn't think much of it. He was just my best friend's younger brother, and it seemed innocent enough. But as time went on, we got closer, and eventually he gathered the courage to tell me how he felt. Nearly 2 years ago, we shared our first kiss, and it felt like the beginning of something beautiful. Since then, our relationship had felt like a dream. I found myself feeling happier than I'd ever been, and he often said the same. We spent so much time together sharing our hopes, our dreams, our fears. We would stay up late, talking about life and making plans for the future. He knew everything about me, and I thought I knew everything about him. I felt like I had found my person, the one I could trust with my heart. But everything changed 2 days ago. He texted me, saying we needed to talk, and my heart sank. I felt this heavy sense of dread, wondering what he might want to say. I tried to reassure myself that it couldn't be too bad, but deep down, I was bracing myself for something terrible. He picked me up and drove us to a park near my house, the same park where we'd had so many good times together, where we'd taken long walks and shared sweet moments. But that day, there was a heaviness in the air. He was silent for a long time, just staring at the ground, and I could tell that whatever he was about to say was tearing him apart. He looked like he was going to be sick. Finally, he managed to get the words out. He confessed that he had cheated on me. It happened at a friend's going-away party a few nights before. He had kissed his friend's sister, a girl he had a brief fling with before we got together. In that moment, it felt like the ground was ripped out from under me. My heart shattered, and a wave of anger and betrayal washed over me. I slapped him hard across the face, tears streaming down my cheeks, and demanded that he take me home. He didn't argue, didn't try to explain himself. He just started the car and drove in silence. I could see the pain and guilt on his face, but I couldn't bring myself to care at that moment. All I could think about was the fact that he had broken my trust in the worst possible way. On the drive back, he asked if I wanted to talk about it. I was furious, but I also felt desperate for answers. So I said, "Fine, let's talk." He pulled over on the side of the road, and I demanded to know what happened. He explained that at the party, they had all been drinking heavily. His friend's sister kept bringing him shots, even after he'd had enough. She led him up to her room with the promise of more drinks, and then she kissed him. He didn't push her away. In fact, they made out, and he confessed that he put his hand down her pants before realizing what he was doing and stopping. I was so angry and hurt that I slapped him again. I screamed at him to take me home and told him I didn't want to hear another word. I couldn't even process the details. I just wanted to get away from him, to escape the painful reality of what he had done. The whole ride back, I was crying and yelling, pouring out all of my anger and grief. He just kept driving, silent, with a haunted look on his face, like he wanted to disappear from the world. After he dropped me off, I went inside my house, shut the door, and broke down completely. I cried harder than I ever had before, feeling like my heart had been ripped out. I called my best friend, his sister, and told her what had happened. She was furious with him too, but she also knew how deep his struggles ran. She told me she would check on him because she was worried he might do something reckless. I told her she should, because despite everything, I still knew him well enough to realize he might hurt himself out of guilt and self-hatred. Sure enough, a few hours later, she called me back, panicked. He had tried to overdose on migraine medication and alcohol. After dropping me off, he went for a walk, then came back home and locked himself in his room. When she realized he wasn't answering, she forced open the door and found him unconscious with an empty pill bottle nearby. She called for help, and one of our friends rushed him to the hospital. He was admitted to a psychiatric facility where he would have to stay for a few days. When she told me what had happened, I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, worry, confusion. As much as I hated what he had done to me, I couldn't just stop caring about him. This was someone I had loved deeply, someone I had shared my life with. Seeing him hurt so badly, knowing that he had reached such a dark place, broke my heart all over again. The next day, I went over to his house to collect my things. I found his phone lying on the nightstand and decided to look through it. I know it was probably wrong of me, but I couldn't help myself. I needed to know more about what he was thinking, what he had been going through. I found pages and pages of notes he had written. They were filled with self-hatred, confusion, and desperation. He kept asking himself why he had done this, why he had hurt the person he loved most in the world. He wrote about how scared and helpless he had felt, how he despised himself for becoming the kind of person he had always hated. Reading his words, I couldn't stop the tears from flowing. It hurt so much to see the depth of his regret and to know that he was suffering so intensely. He kept calling himself a monster, saying that he deserved all the pain he was feeling. But he also wrote about how much he loved me, how I was the light of his life, the one good thing he had ever known. It was clear that he was completely shattered by what had happened, and he couldn't forgive himself. In that moment, I wished that things could be simple. I wished that he could just be the villain of the story, and I could hate him without question. But I knew it wasn't that black and white. This wasn't just about him making a terrible choice. It was about his struggles with addiction, his history of trauma, and the deep scars he carried inside. I still loved him so much, even though I knew I needed to walk away. It felt like my heart was being torn in two. Despite everything, I decided to call him while he was in the hospital. I just wanted to tell him that he was loved and that I hoped he would take care of himself while he was there. I told him that I believed he was taken advantage of that night, that the girl had preyed on his vulnerabilities. But he simply responded, "But I still did it." He sounded broken, and it was clear that he couldn't forgive himself for what had happened. We agreed that when he got out of the hospital, we would have one final conversation. But deep down, I think we both knew that our relationship had come to an end. We loved each other, but love wasn't enough to fix the damage that had been done. We both needed time to heal and to figure out who we were without each other. I knew that staying with him would only drag us both down further, and I couldn't let that happen. I've spent the past few days trying to come to terms with everything. Some moments, I feel furious, angry that he betrayed me, angry that he hurt me so deeply. Other times, I feel overwhelming sadness, remembering all the beautiful moments we shared and realizing that those memories are now tainted. And then there are times when I just feel empty, like I'm floating through a haze of grief and confusion. Even now, I don't have all the answers. I don't know if I'll ever fully understand why he did what he did, but I do know that this has been one of the hardest things I've ever gone through. I know that I still care about him, and that part of me will always love him. But I also know that I have to let him go, for my own sake and for his. Maybe someday, if we both grow and heal, we'll find our way back to each other. Maybe time will reveal a path for us. But for now, I have to focus on myself and my own healing. It's the only way I'll be able to move forward and find peace again. And as painful as it is, I know that letting him go is the right thing to do. If we're truly meant to be, the universe will bring us back together when we're both ready. Until then, all I can do is take things one day at a time and hope that we both find the strength to heal.